The morning sun rose over the wide plains as Liam guided his horse through the tall grass, his hat pulled low to shield his tired eyes, and the quiet wind brushed against his coat while he rode toward the familiar edge of his ranch, thinking only about finishing the long trip and giving both himself and his horse a rest after days on the trail. But everything changed when he reached the front gate and saw another horse standing there alone, trembling softly with its head lowered as if it had been waiting for someone. Liam slowed his pace and felt his heart thump harder because the horse was not one he recognized, and yet it carried a heavy saddlebag on one side, the leather worn and dust-covered, and the animal itself looked scared, confused, and tired as if it had traveled for miles just to reach him, and something inside Liam told him that this was not an ordinary situation. He approached slowly, whispering calm words to avoid startling the creature, and the horse raised its head just enough for him to see tears streaming from its eyes. Something so rare Liam froze in place because a crying horse was not something he had ever seen in all his years on the plains, and the sight shook him deeply, making him wonder what trouble or tragedy the animal had run through to reach his ranch. The horse stepped toward him as if seeking help and pressed its head against his arm, breathing shakily, and Liam felt an unexpected wave of emotion sweep through him because the creature was clearly trying to tell him something, its body trembling and its eyes fixed on the saddlebag that hung heavily by its side, and Liam gently placed his hand over the worn leather. He felt the weight inside and knew instantly that something important was in that bag, something the horse wanted him to see, and yet his hands hesitated because opening it felt like opening the door to someone else's pain, maybe someone who had trusted this animal with a final hope or a final message, and Liam's breath grew tight as he realized the truth that someone out there was missing or hurt or worse. Still he kept calm and whispered to the trembling horse as he slowly loosened the strap, and the animal let out a soft cry that made his chest ache because it was not the sound of fear but the sound of sorrow, the kind that came when there was no one left to turn to except a stranger kind enough to listen, and in that moment Liam understood that the creature had chosen him for a reason. He pulled the saddlebag open and felt his hands shake slightly as he reached inside, ready for anything and yet not ready at all, and the horse pressed closer as if urging him forward, its breath warm and unsteady against his shoulder, while the sky above them grew strangely quiet, as though the entire world was watching and waiting. Inside the bag his fingers brushed against soft fabric, and then something firmer wrapped within it, and when he lifted it into the light his heart squeezed painfully because he realized he was holding a small bundle, carefully wrapped in a blanket that had once been blue but was now pale from dust and travel, and the bundle felt so light that for a moment Liam feared the worst. He gently pulled back the blanket, and the sight that met him made his breath catch in his throat, and his eyes sting with sudden tears because inside the bundle was a tiny baby, barely a few months old, sleeping against the worn cloth with a peaceful expression that clashed painfully with the fear and exhaustion carried by the horse. Liam felt the world tilt around him as he stared at the child, trying to understand how a baby had been left in the care of a horse and why that same horse had traveled so far to bring the child to him. And he realized then that the crying he saw in the horse's eyes was real, born from desperation and the hope that someone would protect the little life it carried. The horse nudged the baby gently as if asking Liam to take responsibility, and Liam felt his throat tighten because he could see the trust in the animal's gaze, trust heavy enough to break a man's heart, and he knew then that this was no accident, no random event, but something far deeper, something tied to danger or loss or bravery that he did not yet understand. He lifted the baby close to his chest and the child shifted softly in its sleep, and the warmth of its tiny body pushed tears to Liam's eyes because he felt the weight of responsibility settle on him like a stone. Yet he also felt a protective instinct rise stronger than anything he had felt in years, and he whispered a promise to the horse that he would keep the child safe no matter what. The horse let out a soft breath of relief and lowered its head in exhaustion, and Liam knew that whatever journey had brought the animal here had been long and painful, and now that journey had become his own, and he understood without a single word spoken that everything in his life had changed the moment he opened that saddlebag. Liam carried the baby inside his small ranch house, his hands steady but his heart racing with questions that piled up faster than he could untangle them, and the trembling horse followed him only far enough to see the child laid gently on a folded blanket near the warm fire, then stopped at the doorway as if unsure whether it was allowed to come in or whether its long mission was finally over, and Liam felt a deep ache in his chest as he glanced back at the loyal creature that had brought such a fragile life to him. He knelt beside the baby and listened to the soft breaths rising and falling in steady rhythm, and he felt a strange mix of fear and comfort because the child seemed peaceful despite everything that must have happened before reaching the ranch, and Liam could not understand why fate had chosen him, a quiet cowboy who spent his days working cattle and fixing fences, to carry such a heavy responsibility. The horse let out a weary whine from outside, and Liam stepped out to check on it. Seeing its legs shaking from exhaustion and its eyes still cloudy from fear and sadness, and he slowly guided the animal to the water trough, letting it drink until its breath steadied and its muscles relaxed slightly, though the deep sorrow in its eyes did not fade, as if it still carried memories too painful to forget. Liam stroked its mane with a slow hand and spoke softly, trying to ease the ache he saw in the animal's expression, and the horse leaned into his touch with a tired sigh as if grateful for even a moment of kindness, and Liam knew without question that this creature had seen something terrible, something that forced it to take the baby and run with everything it had left. He looked toward the horizon where the sun was climbing higher, painting the plains in warm gold, and he wondered where the horse had come from, how far it had traveled, and what danger might still be following behind it, and the idea chilled him so deeply that he scanned the open land again, instinctively checking for movement or shadows that did not belong. After making sure the horse was settled, Liam returned to the child, lifting the baby gently and holding it against his chest as he searched the saddlebag for anything that might explain its presence, and his fingers brushed against a small folded paper tucked deep inside, worn at the edges and stained as if held tightly during fear or last breath, and the sight of it made his heart beat heavy with dread. He opened the paper carefully and read the shaky handwriting written inside, each word carved with urgency and hope, and his breath caught as he understood the message because it spoke of danger, of a family trying to escape someone cruel, forcing a mother to entrust her baby to her horse with a desperate belief that the animal would find help, and the final line begged whoever found the child to protect it, even at the cost of their own safety. Liam felt his throat tighten as he imagined what the mother must have gone through, the fear she carried, the courage it took to place a baby into a saddlebag and send her beloved horse into the wilderness, praying that the animal would find someone kind enough to understand, and Liam felt a level of responsibility that made his knees weak. He sat beside the fire with the baby cradled in his arms and read the message again, letting every word settle into his heart, and he knew he could not ignore the plea, could not pretend he had not seen the truth, because the baby was here now and the mother had chosen him without even knowing who he was, trusting that anyone her horse brought the child to must be good. The fire crackled softly and the baby stirred, opening eyes that were wide and full of innocent curiosity, and Liam felt something shift inside him, like the quiet spark of a bond forming far deeper than he expected, and the child reached out with a tiny hand that brushed against his shirt, making him choke on the rush of emotion that flooded through him. Outside, the horse gave a soft sound, one that carried relief and exhaustion mixed together, and Liam stepped out to check on it again, finding it lying near the barn with its head resting on the hay, and he knew that the animal had used the last of its strength to bring the baby to him, guided by a trust that went beyond human understanding. He walked back inside and fed the baby with warm milk he managed to prepare, and the child drank slowly, its small fingers gripping his hand as if holding on to the first sense of safety it had felt in days, and Liam felt tears burn behind his eyes because this innocent life was now depending completely on him and he had no idea how to fill the role it needed. As the morning stretched on, Liam made a small nest for the baby on his bed, layering blankets so the child would stay warm, and he checked repeatedly to make sure the breathing was steady, each rise and fall reminding him how fragile life could be and how precious this tiny person had become in such a short time, and he could not stop looking at the peaceful face that trusted him without question. Still the weight of the mystery pressed heavy on him, and when he walked back outside to tend to the horse, he felt a shiver run through him because the plain seemed too quiet, too still, as though something unseen was watching from far off, waiting for the right moment to come closer, and Liam's instincts whispered that danger was not far behind. He tightened the reins on his own horse and checked the barn doors twice, knowing he might have to move quickly if trouble came, and as he returned to the house his eyes never stopped scanning the land, trained by years of ranch life to notice any shift in the wind or movement in the grass that did not belong, and a knot tightened in his stomach as he realized he was no longer protecting only himself but a helpless child who had already escaped something terrible once. He sat near the window with the baby resting beside him and the message open on his knee, reading the words again and again, searching for clues, and wondering who the woman was who wrote them, what danger she faced, and whether she was still alive somewhere, hoping that her baby had made it to safety, and he felt a deep ache for her because she had risked everything for love. As the day stretched into late afternoon, Liam fed the baby again and checked the horse once more, finding it asleep but still twitching from memories that seemed too heavy for its gentle nature. And he whispered a promise to it too, telling the tired creature that it had done something brave, and that he would not let its effort be in vain, and the horse let out a soft breath as if understanding. Inside the house, Liam watched the baby sleep and realized that he could not wait for the danger to come to him. He needed to go find answers, learn the truth, discover who was hunting this child and what had happened to its family. And he knew that the only place to start was the nearest town where news traveled fast and people noticed things. But he also knew he had to be careful, because asking the wrong question could bring the wrong attention. He sat beside the fire again and gathered his thoughts, listening to the gentle breathing of the baby, the low rustle of the horse outside, and the quiet hum of the wind moving across the plains, and he felt something strong rising inside him, something like determination mixed with fear but rooted deeply in compassion, and he realized he was no longer just a cowboy trying to get through the day. He was a protector now, tied to a mystery that would change everything, and he knew that whatever waited in the shadows would not stop until it found what it had lost. And Liam whispered to himself that he would not let it. The night settled over the plains with a heavy stillness as Liam prepared for the journey he knew he had to make, and he moved quietly through the small house, packing only what he needed because every moment felt important, and every breath carried the reminder that danger might already be searching for the baby, and he glanced repeatedly toward the bed where the child slept in soft warmth, unaware of the world shifting around it. Liam stepped outside and the cool air brushed across his face, carrying the faint scent of dry grass and distant dust, and he walked toward the barn where the loyal horse lay resting from its long journey, its body still weak but its eyes following him with a mixture of trust and sorrow, and he knelt beside it with a gentle hand on its mane, whispering that he needed to leave for answers but that he would return as fast as he could. The horse lifted its head slightly as if trying to stand and go with him, but its legs trembled and Liam placed a calming hand on its neck, telling it softly that it had already done more than anyone could ask. And the animal finally lowered its head again with a breath that sounded almost like relief mixed with exhaustion, and Liam felt a deep gratitude rise in his chest for the courage the creature had shown. He saddled his own horse quietly to avoid waking the baby too early, but when he stepped back inside the house he found the child awake, lying silently with wide eyes that seemed older than they should be, and Liam felt his heart twist because the child looked at him as if sensing the tension in the air, as if knowing something dangerous was approaching even though no sound had been heard yet. He lifted the baby gently and wrapped it in an extra blanket, pressing it close to his chest as he whispered soothing words, and the child rested its head against him with a soft sigh that made the weight on his shoulders feel even heavier, because this tiny person trusted him completely despite having known him for only a short time. Liam secured a small basket to his saddle, lining it with blankets so the baby would stay warm during the ride, and he placed the child inside carefully, making sure the basket rested firmly against his side where he could keep an eye on every breath and every small movement. And once everything was ready, he mounted his horse with a steady breath that masked the worry twisting through his mind. The moon cast a pale glow across the plains as Liam guided his horse toward the distant lights of the nearest town. A ride that would take hours, but one he knew he had to make because waiting at the ranch without answers would only lead danger straight to his door, and he could not risk that when a helpless child depended on him for safety. The gentle rhythm of the horse's steps kept the baby calm, and Liam checked often to make sure the child was warm and comfortable, glancing down with protective eyes as the wind brushed across them and carried faint sounds from the distant hills, sounds that made him tense because he could not shake the feeling that someone or something was following the same trail. As he rode through the quiet night, memories from the note echoed in his mind, the trembling handwriting and the desperate plea for help, and he found himself wondering about the mother again, imagining her fear, imagining the moment she chose to trust her horse with the one thing she loved more than her own life, and he silently hoped she was still alive somewhere waiting for news that her baby had been saved. Hours passed before the warm lights of the town appeared in the distance, flickering softly like scattered stars fallen to the ground, and Liam felt a wave of relief even as tension tightened his shoulders because he knew he had to be careful about who he spoke to, since danger could be closer than he realized and asking the wrong person could expose the baby to even greater risk. He dismounted near the edge of town and lifted the basket into his arms to keep the baby close, walking down the quiet main street where lanterns glowed behind windows and the wooden boards creaked under his boots, and he scanned every doorway and alley for movement while trying to appear calm, though his heart beat faster with each step. The general store was still open, its door propped slightly ajar, and Liam stepped inside hoping to gather news without drawing attention, and the storekeeper Mr. Hale looked up from behind the counter with weary eyes that softened when he saw the baby in Liam's arms, and he walked over with a surprised whisper asking whose child it was and why Liam looked so troubled. Liam hesitated because he did not want to reveal the truth too quickly, but the storekeeper had known him for years and was a man who kept quiet when needed, So Liam shared a simple version of the story, telling him that he had found a lost horse that carried the baby and that he needed to learn if anyone in town had seen strangers passing through or heard of trouble nearby. Mr. Hale listened with a growing frown and shook his head slowly, saying that a few riders had come through earlier in the day asking strange questions, not about a baby but about a woman traveling alone with a saddlebag that looked heavy, and Liam felt a sharp chill race through him because it meant the danger was close, maybe too close. Before Liam could ask more, the door opened and an older man entered the store with hurried steps, his eyes scanning the shelves before landing on Liam with a sharp stare that lasted a moment too long, and Liam felt every muscle in his body tense as he shifted the basket slightly to shield the baby, telling himself to stay calm even as instinct warned him that this man was not here for supplies. The older man nodded politely to the storekeeper and pretended to browse, but his eyes returned again and again to Liam, and Liam knew he needed to leave before the wrong question was asked or the wrong interest was stirred. So he thanked Mr. Hale quickly and walked out with measured steps, hiding the rising panic beneath a calm expression. Outside, Liam hurried toward his horse, his boots striking the wooden walkway with urgency that he tried to hide, and the man from the store stepped out behind him and watched him from the doorway with an expression that was too focused, too calculating, and Liam knew that this trip had just become far more dangerous than he expected. He mounted his horse quickly and kept the baby close, guiding the animal away from the main street and toward the back trail that circled around the town, and he did not look back even though he felt eyes watching him from behind, following him with a cold certainty that made his skin crawl and his heart race. Once he reached the edge of town, he spurred his horse into a faster pace, needing to put as much distance as possible between himself and the stranger whose presence felt wrong in every way, and the wind rushed past him as the moon lit the trail ahead, casting shadows that danced across the plains and made every shape look like someone waiting to emerge from the darkness. He rode until the lights of the town faded entirely behind him, stopping only when the baby stirred and let out a soft cry that pierced through the tension, and Liam slowed his horse, lifting the child gently to comfort it, rocking it against his chest with steady breaths until the crying eased, and he whispered reassurances that he would not let anything harm it. As the baby settled, Liam listened to the quiet night and felt a heavy truth pressing on him. He could no longer return to the ranch, not yet, not with danger so close, because the stranger from the store would surely follow the trail and search for answers, and Liam needed to stay ahead of whatever threat chased the baby across the plains. He looked down at the child, whose small hand now rested against his shirt, and he felt a fierce determination rise inside him, stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, because the baby needed him and he would not fail, no matter how far he had to go or how many shadows followed behind. This journey was no longer about finding answers alone, it was about survival, about protecting a life that had been trusted to him by a mother he had never met and a horse that had given everything to bring the child to safety. And Liam whispered into the night that he would see this through until the end. No matter the cost. The sky was still dark when Liam guided his horse across the quiet plains, the baby held close against his chest under his coat to protect it from the cold wind, and each breath he took felt heavier as he tried to think of a place where danger could not find them. Because the stranger from town had eyes that followed like a wolf tracking prey, and Liam knew that man would not give up easily. He followed the narrow trail that led toward the old canyon route, a path most travelers avoided because of the rough ground and twisting turns, but Liam knew the land well enough to trust his instincts, and the canyon would give him cover from anyone trying to follow too close, letting him hide his tracks while he figured out what to do next. The baby stirred with a soft whimper and Liam slowed his horse, whispering gently to comfort the small child whose entire world now depended on him, and he felt a deep ache in his heart because he wished he could offer more than whispered promises and hurried steps into the dark, but right now all he had was his determination to outrun whatever danger hunted them. As he reached the entrance of the canyon, the wind changed, bringing a faint sound from behind him, a sound too soft to be the movement of plains animals and too heavy to be the whisper of wind alone, and Liam tightened his grip on the reins as he listened again, realizing with dread that someone was following his trail far quicker than he hoped. He nudged his horse forward, urging it deeper into the canyon where the tall walls rose like protective arms around them, and the shadows swallowed the faint moonlight as he rode through the winding path, the sound of hoofbeats echoing softly against the stone until the echoes mixed with the pounding of his own heartbeat. Liam found a small hollow in the canyon wall and stopped to check the baby, holding the tiny child close while his eyes searched the darkness for any sign of movement, and the baby looked up at him with innocent calm as if trusting completely that he would keep them safe, and the trust made him breathe deeper even while fear pulled tight around his chest. He rested only a moment before continuing, knowing he could not stay in one place too long, and as the canyon deepened the sound behind him grew clearer, the steady rhythm of hooves that matched his pace as someone closed the distance with unsettling precision, making Liam press on with a silent prayer that he could stay ahead long enough to reach safety. Hours passed before the first light of dawn touched the sky beyond the canyon walls, casting a soft glow that reminded Liam how long he had been riding without rest, and he knew his horse needed a break soon, or it would collapse under the strain, yet stopping now felt dangerous with the echo of pursuit growing closer every mile. Finally he reached the end of the canyon and emerged into a stretch of open land dotted with low shrubs and distant hills, and he spotted a thin line of smoke rising from a small cabin far ahead, a place he recognized from old memories because his late uncle had lived there once before moving east, and though the cabin now belonged to someone else, Liam hoped the person living there would offer help if he explained enough to earn their trust. He pushed forward with renewed urgency, guiding his horse toward the cabin as the baby yawned softly in his arms, unaware of the danger that followed them, and Liam whispered a promise that he would find a safe place soon because he could feel the chase tightening like a noose around them. As he approached the cabin, a woman stepped out onto the porch, her clothes simple and her expression firm but not unfriendly, and she watched him ride closer with cautious eyes that hinted she was not a stranger to trouble, and Liam stopped a few steps away, lifting one hand slowly to show he meant no harm. The woman introduced herself as Mara and asked what brought him to her place so early in the morning, and Liam explained that he was in trouble and needed a safe place just for a short while, showing her the baby in his arms, which softened her stern face into one of concern and quiet understanding, and she motioned him inside quickly before anyone on the trail noticed. Inside the cabin the air was warm from a small fire burning in the hearth, and Mara offered him a seat while she brought water and a blanket for the baby, asking gently who the child belonged to, and Liam told her the truth in careful words, explaining the horse that carried the baby, the note he found, the stranger in town, and the feeling that danger was closing in on them fast. Mara listened with a serious expression and nodded slowly as if fitting pieces together in her mind, and she then told Liam that she had seen riders pass through the night before, asking questions about a woman traveling alone, the same woman he mentioned, and Mara believed those men were searching with a kind of desperation that only came from cruel intentions, which made Liam's breath catch in worry. She told Liam that he could rest for a short time but warned that staying too long would put her at risk as well, since the men might come checking every cabin or settlement along the plains, and she placed a gentle hand on the baby's head before stepping to the window to watch the trail behind her home, scanning the horizon for any sign of riders. Liam thanked her and fed the baby with the warm milk Mara prepared, feeling his strength return slightly as he watched the child drink quietly, and he felt gratitude for the woman who opened her door to strangers even when danger was close enough to bring fear into anyone's heart. But the moment of calm did not last long, because Mara suddenly stiffened at the window and whispered for Liam to look, pointing toward the distant ridge where two dark figures on horseback moved slowly along the trail, their silhouettes sharp against the rising sun, and Liam knew instantly that these were the same men who had been searching for the woman and now were tracking him. Mara told him he had only minutes before they reached the cabin, and Liam stood quickly, placing the baby back into the basket and securing the blanket tightly around the child, because he could not let the men see the baby or ask questions that would reveal the truth, and he thanked Mara again as he moved toward the back door where she pointed to a narrow path leading into a wooded section behind the cabin. With the baby against his chest and the basket held firmly, Liam hurried out the back and guided his horse quietly along the hidden path, keeping low to avoid being seen, and Mara stayed at the cabin door as if ready to delay the men with whatever story she could manage, giving Liam precious moments to disappear into the safety of the trees. As Liam rode deeper into the woods he heard distant voices from the cabin area, rough and demanding, and he felt guilt weigh on him for putting Mara in danger, but he also knew he had no choice because the baby's safety had to come first no matter the cost, and he promised himself he would one day repay her kindness. The forest grew thicker and the light dimmed under the tall trees, offering him the hiding place he needed, and he continued forward with careful steps, listening for any signs of pursuit while holding the baby close and steady, and the quiet breaths of the child strengthened his resolve with every passing moment. He traveled deeper until the voices faded completely, replaced only by the sound of rustling leaves and distant birds, and he allowed his horse to slow as he reached a small clearing with a stream, a peaceful spot hidden from all sides, and he stopped there to rest for a few moments, letting the tension ease from his shoulders. But even as he rested he knew one thing clearly. This was not the end of the chase. It was only the calm before the storm that waited ahead. The forest clearing grew calm around Liam as he knelt beside the stream, splashing water on his face to steady his nerves while the baby slept quietly against his chest. And he knew he could not stay in the clearing long because the men hunting them were relentless and would search every path until they found the trail again. But for a moment he allowed himself to breathe and gather strength for whatever was coming next. Liam sat beneath a tall tree and studied the note once more, the worn paper trembling slightly in his hands as he read the mother's words again, the plea for kindness and the desperate hope that someone good would find her child, and he felt a deep ache in his heart because he wished he knew her fate, wished he could tell her that her baby was safe for now and being protected with every ounce of strength he had. The baby stirred with a soft sound that pulled Liam from his thoughts, and he held the child closer with gentle care, whispering comfort as he rocked back and forth under the shade of the tree, and the tiny hand reached up and brushed his chin in a way that made his chest warm with emotion because in such a short time he had formed a bond so strong that leaving the child behind was no longer something he could imagine. The quiet moment did not last long because the distant sound of breaking branches echoed through the trees, a sharp crack that made Liam rise instantly to his feet, his heart pounding as he scanned the edge of the clearing, and he realized with dread that the men must have found the path again and were now sweeping through the woods, searching for any sign of him and the baby. He lifted the child and placed the baby securely in the basket tied to his saddle, tightening the blankets and whispering that everything would be all right even though fear pressed against him like a heavy weight, and he mounted his horse with urgency as the sounds of pursuit grew louder, boots snapping twigs and voices carrying faintly between the trees. Liam guided his horse deeper into the forest, turning sharply through narrow paths and ducking under low branches while the baby clung softly to the blanket, unaware of the danger pressing closer with every passing moment. And Liam kept his eyes fixed ahead, even as worry gnawed at him that the men might surround him before he reached the eastern ridge. The trees thickened and the forest floor sloped upward, giving him a momentary advantage, but the men behind him were determined, shouting to one another as they searched with rising frustration, and Liam felt their voices echo through the woods like a warning that time was running out. He urged his horse forward until he reached the base of the ridge, where giant rocks rose in uneven shapes that could offer cover if he moved carefully, and he led his horse between the stones until he found a narrow crevice hidden by a curtain of vines, just wide enough for him and the baby to slip inside, and he guided the horse in with slow steps, praying the men would not notice the opening. Inside the crevice the air was cool and dim, and Liam crouched low, holding the baby against his chest while the horse stood silently behind him as if understanding the need for stillness, and he listened to the sounds of the forest holding its breath alongside him, every rustle and whisper magnified by fear. The voices came closer, the men arguing about tracks and direction, their suspicion growing sharper with every passing second, and Liam felt his heart beat so fiercely it hurt, afraid that even the softest sound from the baby would give their hiding place away, but the child remained calm as if sensing that silence meant safety. For long minutes the men searched, moving near the rocks, their boots grinding against gravel and their breaths loud and impatient, and Liam tightened his hold on the child as the footsteps drew dangerously close, passing just beyond the curtain of vines that hid the entrance, and he willed himself not to move even a finger, hoping the shadows would protect them. Finally the footsteps drifted away, fading into the deeper part of the forest as the men chose another direction, frustrated and confused, and Liam did not breathe until the last echo disappeared entirely, leaving only the quiet rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird returning to the trees. When he was sure the men were gone, Liam stepped out slowly from the crevice, checking every direction before guiding his horse back into the sunlight, and he felt a wave of relief wash over him mixed with exhaustion so heavy his knees almost weakened, but he forced himself to keep moving because they needed to get far from this place before the men circled back. He rode until the forest thinned and the land opened once more into rolling fields dotted with wildflowers, and the sky stretched above him in a wash of warm gold as the sun reached its highest point. And for the first time since the journey began, he felt a small glimmer of hope that maybe he could find a way to protect the baby for good. After several miles he reached a small settlement where smoke rose from chimneys and children played near the river, and Liam hesitated because he did not want to bring trouble to innocent people, but he needed a place where he could learn the truth about the woman who wrote the note and where her enemies came from, and maybe someone here had seen or heard something that could help. An older man working near a well noticed Liam and approached with a calm expression, asking if he needed help, and Liam explained that he was looking for information about a woman who had been traveling near the plains, describing her as carefully as he could, and the man listened with growing concern before nodding slowly. The older man told Liam that a woman matching that description had passed through 2 days before, carrying a deep sadness in her eyes as if she had lost everything, and she had asked for directions to the distant mountains where she said she had family, but she was being followed by two men whose intentions looked dangerous, and she left quickly to keep ahead of them. Liam felt a painful squeeze in his chest because this meant the woman might still be alive, running alone through the wild with hope fading in her heart, and he looked down at the baby who gazed up with trusting eyes, and he realized that the child deserved the truth as much as he did. The older man placed a gentle hand on Liam's shoulder and told him that he and the settlement would offer shelter to the baby while Liam searched for the mother if he wished, saying they would keep the child safe with kindness and warmth, and Liam felt grateful but also torn because he had grown attached to the baby in a way he had not expected. After a long breath, Liam made the hardest choice he had faced, deciding to search for the mother because the baby needed answers that he alone could not give, and he knew that leaving the child in a safe place was the only way to protect it while he went after the truth. So he handed the baby to the older man with a trembling heart. The baby reached for him with a tiny hand that brushed his shirt, and Liam closed his eyes for a moment as emotion washed over him, promising the child that he would return, promising that he would bring the truth back no matter how far he had to travel or how much danger stood in his way. He turned his horse toward the mountains where the woman had fled, and as he rode away, he looked back once more at the baby who now rested safely in gentle arms, and he felt a deep resolve rise within him stronger than any fear. Because this story was no longer just about escape or survival. It was now about bringing a family back together. A promise born from the moment a crying horse appeared at his gate. And Liam rode toward the mountains with hope leading him forward, and love guiding every step.